Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Idle Park Talk Show. Over the past week, the Islamic Republic of Iran has held a multi-day funeral procession and a series of public mourning ceremonies for its slain leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. These ceremonies were held across both Iran and Iraq, culminating in his burial on July 9, 2026. The funeral processions, public rallies, and mourning ceremonies brought together millions of Iranians and Shia Muslims who took the streets in both countries. Some reports have placed the number of mourners at a conservative estimate of around 45 million people. These are extraordinary numbers, and these numbers raise an important question. For years, Western governments and much of Western media have portrayed Ayatollah Ali Khamenei as deeply unpopular amongst his own people. Yet, the sheer scale of these funeral processions suggests one of two things. Either the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was far more beloved than we were led to believe, or his assassination, along with members of his family, reminded many Iranians of the role he played in the 1979 Islamic Revolution and in what they see as Iran's liberation from Western domination. Whatever conclusions you reach, one thing is difficult and impossible to ignore. A leader who is universally hated by his own people rarely receives a funeral of this magnitude. Think about this for a moment. Do you believe that if President Donald Trump were to die today, he would receive the kind of public turnout we witnessed during the funeral of slain Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei? Who would come out in their millions to mourn Donald Trump? Given the extent to which many believe President Trump has drifted away from part of his own mega base, I genuinely wonder how many of his supporters will share a tear if he were to pass away today. Think about some of the promises many of his supporters feel have gone unfulfilled and the hardship they believe Americans have experienced since his return to office. The Epstein files are still nowhere to be found. The Russian-Ukraine war, which President Donald Trump repeatedly referred to as Biden's war, has now become his responsibility. Not only has he been unable to bring that conflict to an end, but he has also become involved in a new military confrontation in the Gulf. For the past several months, President Donald Trump has been engaged in a war with Iran that many analysts argue will be extremely difficult to win. And the consequences of that conflict are increasingly being felt within the United States itself. So I'll ask the question again. If Donald Trump were to die today, who would truly mourn him? Now, while attending the NATO summit in Ankara 2 days ago, reports began to circulate that Iranian operatives were allegedly plotting to assassinate President Donald Trump. According to those reports, the intelligence originated from Israeli intelligence services and was subsequently shared with the United States. During a press conference, President Trump briefly addressed the reported threat.
Stephen Nelson from the New York Post. I'd like you to address speculation that you're leaving Ankara not in the new Air Force One because of security concerns involving Iran. You've spoken today twice about them possibly assassinating you and possibly being successful.
No, I'm number one on the kill list for Iran. They're lovely people. I'm number one, so I don't know. I can't tell you that, but I don't really care because I'm doing my job and I'm doing it, I hope, better than anybody's ever done it because we have a country that's hot and really, really successful. But I mention it only because it's on the list. I mean, it came out. There was another list came out yesterday, and I'm number one on. I like being number one on TikTok better, but I'm number one on the list for killing.
Interestingly, the report appeared to have been taken seriously. Following his departure from Turkey, President Trump reportedly flew aboard the older Air Force One aircraft to London before transferring to the newer presidential aircraft for the remainder of his journey. Whether this was directly connected to the reported assassination threat remains unclear, but it is certainly a story worth watching in the days ahead.
New York Times. But why aren't you flying the new plane home?
Say what?
Why aren't you flying on the new Air Force One home?
It's flying to Europe, to one of the big bases, 2 or 3 of the big bases, where we can show it to the people, and we'll be going home by normal methods. But we have it going to Europe.
Anyways, let's get back to the Supreme Leader's funeral. The Iranian people did not simply gather to mourn their Supreme Leader and his family. They also used the occasion to express their feelings towards the United States, particularly towards President Donald Trump. Many mourners carried signs and chanted slogans demanding revenge against President Trump over the killing of their leader. One of the chants repeatedly shared or heard during the funeral procession was, "I swear by the blood of the Supreme Leader, Trump, we will kill you." That was a quote. Some women were also seen holding placards bearing the words, "Kill Trump." That too was a quote. Since the beginning of this war, the Iranian people appear to have rallied behind their government. Any expectation that ordinary Iranians would rise up and overthrow their own government now appears increasingly unrealistic. The hopes in Washington and Tel Aviv that the Iranian people would engineer regime change seems, at least for now, to have reached a natural end. One notable absence throughout the week-long funeral ceremonies was that of the new Supreme Leader, Mojtaba Khamenei. More than a week after his father's death, his whereabouts remain unknown. Reports continue to claim that he suffered severe injuries during the strikes that killed his father, possibly including serious facial injuries and wounds to his limb. Since the war began, Mojtaba Khamenei has not appeared publicly. Although written statements have been released in his name, there have been no photographs, video recordings, or audio messages confirming his condition. President Donald Trump has repeatedly commented on his absence and has on several occasions mocked the new Supreme Leader, suggesting that he may have sustained serious injuries during the initial strikes and ridiculing him for failing to make a public appearance. Yet, while his whereabouts and state of health may be of great interest to those who may wish to target him again, his absence appears to have attracted surprisingly little attention inside Iran. The Iranian government and military have continued to function, defend the country's territorial sovereignty, and challenge US influence in the Gulf region, despite what many in the West would describe as the absence of a visible supreme leader. The Islamic Republic's system of government does not require the supreme leader to be physically present for the state to function. In fact, for several weeks following the killing of the previous supreme leader, the government continued to operate before his successor, Mojtaba Khamenei, was formally chosen to assume that position. Ayatollah Khamenei may be gone, but the Islamic Republic of Iran remains. Its institutions continue to function, its military remains operational, and some would argue the country appears more united and resilient than before. Thanks for watching the Idle Park Talk Show. See you again soon. Bye.